Good afternoon, and I would say that we are now in the final furlong of the straight, not in Sha Tin, but here in the convention center for the Asian Racing Conference. And I personally feel that especially the last session, which has really shared about developments in China, the structures in China, and it has given us really very concrete information about racing and breeding in China. And I would like really to particularly thank the Deputy Secretary General of the Chinese Equestrian Federation Association, Ms. Hua, and the Vice Chairman of the China horse racing industry, Mr. Han, for allowing us to hear straight from the horse's mouth. Before I start the session, I would like to say there is racing and betting in China already. And if you want to witness it, please come on Saturday to the Sha Tin racecourse. Because Hong Kong is part of China, but it's a special administrative region. And from the presentation we heard before, you can see how different and what kind of differences are between Hong Kong racing and the development of racing in China. And I think I found it very good that we heard today what is the direction of horse racing in China, and that the Chinese authorities are very positive about this development of the sport of horse racing. And I would like to stress, we talk about the sports of horse racing. We don't talk, at least at this stage, about horse racing with wagering. I've never heard a clearer articulation of what the direction is and how positive one is about the direction of horse racing in China than what we heard today. And I think there is obviously, it's very encouraging for us, but I think we have now heard the vision, the direction, but what is in the end now the next necessary steps? What has to be done to take this direction to really into implementation? And what is necessary to transform it into reality? We heard in the session this morning how important governance of a sport is, especially governance of a sport like football, if one wagers on it and have not processes, procedures, capabilities in place to govern the sport in the combination of racing and wagering. But if we forget at this stage even the wagering part, so what is, I think, necessary in the development of a regulatory framework and governance framework, which is a prerequisite for every sport in the world, to ensure that this sport is conducted on the basis of integrity, fair competition, animal welfare, and prohibited-free racing. I would like, in a way, to cover, in this respect, probably only as a highlight, and you heard today even how fragmented, in a way, in China it is in relation to the rules of racing. What are, if one really is thorough about developing horse racing in China, one has to address the governance and a regulatory framework. So it goes from rules of racing, it goes to the integrity of the sport, it goes to licensing, because even registration of horses, because all these issues have to be addressed. There should be, if one develops it, a registration and licensing process of operators and racecourses, the licensing of trainers and jockeys, integrity which goes from doping control, plus, in a way, measures taken if people don't comply with the rules of racing. I would really like to stress the issue of integrity, because especially if one thinks about developing the sport in China and even considers, maybe with a medium or long-term view, wagering on racing, if the integrity, which is the key differentiator of racing in relation to other sports, that we have a very, very strong structure and process to do so, I feel very strongly that this is a must, and this has to be shaped and constituted from the beginning. We have then the question, in a way, how to build an operational model. how you, in a way, build an operational model where you have to ask the question, racing and training, which is hardware and software. And we saw today that a lot of these, especially software, have to build from scratch. If one looks at the hardware, I think it's pretty straightforward. It's building a venue, grandstand, tracks, stables. It's a significant project. And if you look at the main racing development in China, the building of the hardware have been always financed via property investment. Some people even say the race course was the annex, but not in a way the main focus for developing a race course. It was the surrounding property development who enabled, in a way, granting a certain piece of land and developing it for property purposes. And then came the big difficulty, the operation, the capabilities, the people you need to run a proper racing establishment. Because in the end, in a way, this is the most challenging part. And I only can say that my colleague Bill will later talk about the challenges we face to build, besides the Hong Kong operation model, an operation in China. But we need, in a way, if you want to develop the sport, the software capabilities will be key. And we talked about the trainers, the jockeys, work riders, stable hands, tracks management. We need the development of the expertise in racing control, handicapping. That will be a major challenge, which I think is very good to hear that the China Equestrian Association is keen and asked for help to do so. But I think it is, in the end, in a way, one has to build, too, a racing proposition which attract owners. If one goes back and looks at a lot of racing developments in China, that was practically that the operator bought all the horses. But if one really thinks about a sustainable development of operations in China, you have to attract owners. You have to have value proposition of owners, which is prize money. And it was very good to hear how we link this back then to the breeding industry. Because everybody dreams maybe about the opening up of the Chinese market, and there will be 5,000 horses, 3,000 horses bought all over the world, without thinking that China will build its own racing industry. This is, I think, a very optimistic dream and a very, in a way, inside-out looking dream. But one has to have value proposition for owners. In the end, one of the biggest questions we have, so how to finance the capex, but how to finance the operational cost? Under which assumption that would be possible not to fund a significant operation without what we heard in the first session, wagering is the lifeblood of racing, without a significant income which comes from the wagering side. The question is, what is in the end the business model under which racing in China could be run? Would it be a centralized model? Would it be a model which is, in a way, very fragmented? So that are, in a way, questions from the general structure of the business model. But one of the key questions is how, with this kind of ambitious objective, how one can create a business model which is sustainable and not only a once-off. And then, in a way, one has to see that, in a way, there's a significant problem for the operator. So we will, in a way, look forward, in a way, to discuss this question. But before we start the discussion, I personally think it's very good that we have 3 speakers who have experience of ventures in China, that we, in a way, go a little bit more in the details and then start a panel discussion.